Hi everyone, this is Niall from windowsnoob.com, and today we're going to look at some more MBAM, BitLocker Management. This is part 7 of a little series covering Configuration Manager version 1910, which is part of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Today we're going to look at reporting and a bit of compliance, so let's get stuck in. If we go to the Configuration Manager server itself and click on the reporting node and expand reports, what you can see after you've enabled the BitLocker management feature and provided that you've got SSRS enabled is a bunch of reports under BitLocker management. There should be 4 reports listed there. And in addition to those 4 reports, you will have another report listed under the language specific folder. So in this case, it's ENUS for me, and that's the Recovery Audit Report. So that makes a total of 5 reports. Let's go through each one and have a quick look at them. So the first one is called the BitLocker Computer Compliance Report, and let's run it and see what happens. So you can see that it's going to prompt for a computer name. You need to know a computer name. In this case, I'm going to enter this one. Click on View Report, and you get some information rendered back. As you can see, we've got a computer details row, and under there we have a bunch of fields. None of them in this version of Configuration Manager get populated if the device is compliant. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but I have informed the Microsoft product group about this. Strangely, if it is non-compliant, the computer details do get populated in these fields. So we can see all the fields here. There's various information that's collected or not collected or not populated, I should say. As we can see, we've got computer name. That's the computer name we entered up here. The domain name, the drive letter that's encrypted, the drive type, the cipher strength. Now there's an interesting one. I've discovered that on all computers in my lab, at least in this version of the MBAM implementation, that cipher strength is never populated, regardless of what algorithm you choose. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you're wondering why it's blank for me. I have also notified Microsoft about that. What we can see here are the protector types that are enabled on this computer. Numerical password and TPM. The protector state is on, and the encryption state is encrypted, which of course means that this one should be compliant, right? So this is the computer compliance report of a specific computer. That gives us details, some details about a computer. Why don't we try putting in a computer that I know is non-compliant? This one, not encrypted. So let's have a look at this one and see what sort of different details we get from the same report. And as you can see, the first row, computer details, on a non-compliant computer is actually populated with information. We've got the computer name, which matches up here, domain name, and so on. The computer type, BitLocker computer non-portable. Well, it's a VM, so yeah. Operating system, Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise. No surprises there. What else have we got? Exempted user, exemption. These are information that are tied to an MBAM GPO, user GPO, which allows you to exempt users. We'll cover that when that ability is added later on in MBAM integrated with Config Manager. Right now, that ability is not there without you setting registry keys. So in this particular case, if we look on the second row, computer volumes, we've got some more information about the computer itself. Cipher strength none. Strangely, now it's populated when it's non-compliant. Protector types, well, there's nothing there, obviously. Protector state is off, and the encryption state is not encrypted. So that's, yeah, it's some good information, but maybe we want more. So let's have a look at some of the other reports. So that was the first one, which is where you can drill into a specific computer's compliance for BitLocker. The next report, BitLocker Enterprise Compliance Dashboard, is slightly more interesting, but it has its own issues. So the first thing that you will notice when you run it is that it prompts for a collection ID. In this case, you can select a collection where you have created a BitLocker policy, MBAM policy. So I've got two MBAM policies that are created and deployed. I should mention that they need to be deployed. So let's choose the Enable BitLocker Encryption policy collection and click on View Report. So straight away we get a rather 90s looking graph type thing, pie charts and so forth, which definitely looks dated. And the information within it, I have to say, is it's not accurate, right? Because according to this, if we were to look at compliance status distribution, unless I'm misunderstanding how this report is to be read, that would tell me that there's 3 computers in this particular collection, which is not the case. If we go here and look at the actual collection itself, let's find the collection, and that would be this one, Enable BitLocker Encryption. You can see there's 6 resources in there, and they have been there for quite some time, I can tell you. All right, so let's go back to the report that we were looking at. It lists 67% are compliant, that's 2 of them, and 33% non-compliant. You can actually click on those parts of the pie chart and it will bring up a list of those computers, which is nice. Now here's where it gets quite funny or amusing, because remember it showed 3 computers, 3 resources, and yet when we click on it we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is actually accurate because I do actually have 6 computers that are compliant, and we do have one that is non-compliant. I'll show you that. Sorry, that's 5 computers I should say. And if we find, if we go back to the report, here, go back and click on the non-compliant part of the chart, we do indeed have one, and that's the one that we were looking at the details of, if you remember, in the first report. It's non-compliant, it's not encrypted. The reason why is I did not enable the virtual TPM on that virtual machine. Now, interestingly, in these reports, you can drill down slightly further by clicking on any clickable item. In this case, the computer name itself is clickable, so we can click on that and get more details about why it's non-compliant. All right, so let's go back 2 steps and look at some more information about that particular report. So if we look over here to the right, you will see that it says non-compliant errors distribution. And the error or the non-compliant computer reason is user postponed encryption, which in a way is true. And the reason I'm saying in a way is because on that VM itself, let's see, can we bring it up and make it a bit easier to understand why I say in a way. So I think it is, let's see. Okay, it's number 4. Let's bring that one up, number 4. So if we look, let's move it over. If we log on to that one, and you can see there's the pop-up, and basically I can kill that off in order to get it out of the way. Now, it will never encrypt on this one. The reason why is because there's no TPM on this one. It's not enabled in the actual virtual machine. So you can see in the admin logs, the MBAM admin logs, that there is this warning, user postponed. And that is the data that you're seeing in the report in Config Manager. User postponed. It's not really accurate. What I would prefer to see here is that it tells us that there's no TPM. So let's just have a quick look in the device manager to confirm that there is no TPM. And I'm a standard user. Great. As you can see, there's no security devices listed here, meaning no TPM. So it's non-existent. At least it's disabled in the BIOS. All right, let's go back to our reports in Config Manager. So we're still on that report. There is one final part to it, and that is this: compliance status distribution by drive type. It shows us a fantastic graphic here with 1, which is listed as exemption. And that really is not true because I haven't exempted anything. So that's why I'm saying I kind of don't really understand how the numbers in this report are actually generated, because they seem a bit off. So here we have compliant 2, non-compliant 1, and yet when we click on it, we actually get a list of 5. And when we click on the non-compliant, we get 1. So 5 and 1 is 6, which is the number that we have in the collection. So something strange there about that particular report. But let's move on to the other 2 reports so that we cover them all. We go back to the monitoring node reports, and we have BitLocker Enterprise Compliance Details. So let's have a look at that one. This report prompts for 3 things. Well, actually 1, because you can change the first 2 values. So let's again select our Enable BitLocker Encryption collection. And if you look at the compliance status up above these values, you can pick and choose what values you want. For example, do you want to look for all compliant computers? Do you want to look for all non-compliant? Or whatever. So this is kind of cool in terms of finding out information about, okay, well, why are things not working in your enterprise? For the second one, the error status, we can look here. Okay, let's see, waiting for TPM, no information, and so on. Actually, here's a good one. Unable to find a compatible TPM. Let's see, does it correctly find our virtual machine that I have deliberately disabled the TPM in? I haven't tested this yet, so let's have a go. And it didn't give us that information, which is a shame. So, oh well, c'est la vie. It's not perfect. Let's go back to all, and let's click on the first one and see compliant. Okay, click on View Report. And in this case, we basically get a list of compliant computers, which is what we already know because we had looked at those details earlier. So let's try non-compliant. And again, it should just give us that non-compliant computer, but it doesn't really give us more information than that. You can drill further by clicking on the computer name as before. So basically, these reports seem to be all linked in terms of the data that they're displaying to us, at least. All right, let's look at the next one. So we have BitLocker Enterprise Compliance Summary. So let's have a look at that one. Again, we have to pick a collection ID, and that is a collection that you have deployed your MBAM policy to. So if you look here, where we created our MBAM policy in Assets and Compliance, down here, BitLocker Management, this is the Enable BitLocker Encryption, this is the deployment, and it is deployed to that collection. And that's the collection that we're using in this current report, right? So yes, this is the right one. Click on View Report. And again, we have a very 90s looking pie chart, or maybe it's 2000s pie chart, but and again, the numbers are slightly different. This one actually looks like it's pulling the correct numbers. We've got 6 computers, which is correct in that collection. 83% are compliant, 17 non-compliant, and so on. So this is actually a more accurate summary than the dashboard. So let's click on that one. And as you can see, we've got the 5 that are compliant. And if I click on the big red wedge, we should see the one that is non-compliant, and we already know that. So that's good. That's 4 reports that do give you an overview of BitLocker compliance within your organization. They do look dated. If you want them to look better, I recommend you roll out Power BI, and you will see some very modern looking reports after that, using the same data. Hopefully in a later video I'll show you how you can do that. Alternatively, you can create your own reports and customize them using the data that you want to show to your managers. Right? So there is one other report that we can look at, And that is the auditing report to see, okay, well, who has been revealing keys and were they successful or not. So that report is called the recovery audit report. And if we run it, you've got a lot of information that it will look for, and values such as the request, whether it was successful or failed, and what key type did you reveal, and also the time frame. So let's say that I want to check for all keys that were revealed since December the 1st, 2019, up until today. And today is the 8th. And let's click on View Report. And here we go. We've got, let's just bring that up like so. We've got a detailed report showing the audit request source, help desk or self-service portal. You can see who the help desk user was, the end user in question, and the computer in question, and whether or not they were successful in this field here, successful. If we scroll down, we'll actually even see one that's failed. And you can see what was revealed under IDs. So key type, recovery key password, or ID. And then, of course, the reason. So why did we give out that key? Well, the BIOS changed, operating system, boot order changed, and so on. Okay, so that's a fairly good report to keep in mind. And those basically are the 5 reports that come out of the box with MBAM when you enable the BitLocker Management feature in Config Manager version 1910. So that's the server-side reports. If you actually go to a client computer and look at the, let's move this one out of the way. Remember that this particular client is our client that is non-compliant deliberately, and the reason why is the TPM is not present. So if you open up the Config Manager properties and go to the Configurations tab of a client, you can actually select the MBAM policy you created and choose View Report. You'll need to be a local administrator in order to run that report. And that's what I'm doing now. And what it should tell you when it opens up Edge is it should give you some details about, well, why is it non-compliant, hopefully. And here is the report. So this is the client-side report in Edge. So as you can see, it lists that the, let's get that out of the way. It lists that the Enable BitLocker encryption baseline is non-compliant. Here's the compliant state, non-compliant. What other information do we have? If we scroll down a bit, yes, it lists some settings, setting type, setting name, BitLocker management settings, underscore BMS OSD encryption policy, none. And the rule name is that. And then it gives you a whole bunch of reasons why, it's got a problem. There's a severity warning, and there's the reg keys that it's looking for, and so forth. All right. So there's the client side view of what compliance looks like when it's got a problem. So if we now go to another client like this one and look at the same report, same client side report, let's see. We can see that this one is compliant and this one is BitLocker, as you can see there. And let's click on View Report. And again, we have to enter administrator credentials. And as we can see, it's compliant. So there will be a lot less information because everything is okay. So there we've seen server-side reports and client-side reports. There is another thing to keep in mind if we go back to the Config Manager server, and that is, well, how can we use this information to, make our job easier? If you remember in an earlier episode, I was talking about enforcing BitLocker encryption by using a configuration baseline containing a CI which sets some registry keys to enforce MBAM encryption. This one here, right? And basically that's tied to this configuration baseline. And if you create this and follow my guide correctly, what you'll end up with is your clients encrypting without user interaction. So on that configuration baseline, of course, we have a deployment and we have deployed that baseline to a collection. And this is the collection here. Now, in the earlier video, I told you that if you deploy this baseline containing the CI with 2 registry keys to a collection and then populate it with computers, all will be good in terms of the MBAM policy forcing encryption without user interaction. That's true as long as the MBAM pop-up has not actually popped up, right? So if the MBAM agent has popped up telling the user to encrypt prior to you setting these keys using the configuration baseline, then nothing's going to happen, just as before, as long as that pop-up is up on the screen. As soon as the user closes it or restarts the computer, encryption will start once it gets policy. So if you want to avoid them delaying encryption further, what you can do is utilize the compliance of your configuration baseline by going to the Deployments tab of this baseline, right-click it, choose Create Collection, and we'll call this one Compliant. And basically you can set the schedule if you wish to speed up things in a lab, run it every 7 minutes, for example, so that as soon as a computer is listed as compliant, as soon as it is, then add it to the collection for enforcing BitLocker encryption. What I mean by that is this. So here we have the new collection that it has created, and as you can see, there are six computers in there that are compliant. All those 6 computers have the registry keys to enforce MBAM encryption, but those registry keys by themselves are useless without the enforce MBAM encryption, the enable BitLocker encryption policy, right? So remember, the order of things is you need to be compliant before you can enable BitLocker encryption, right? So what you could do is you could limit this collection to this collection. In other words, computers will only end up in here to get policy for the algorithm settings and so forth once they're compliant with the enforce MBAM encryption settings. I hope you understood what I was talking about here, but long story short, this just saves you a little bit of additional hassle, and this is only needed for Config Manager version 19.10. More than likely they'll have fixed this particular problem in the next release of Config Manager. Okay, so that was just a little discussion about compliance settings and how you can use it to, well, get better results. If we now go back again to one of the clients and actually look at the logs, you can gather information that will help you understand, well, okay, what's going on my clients in terms of compliance. So you go to logs, there's a log called statemessage.log, and that is that one here. And if we open that up, you will see that there's a bunch of information in there and it looks very strange, but you know, after a bit of digging on the internet, you can figure out what it means. So you've got state IDs 2 and 1, topic types 302, 401, and so forth. Topic ID here, along with a big GUID, which is your site code GUID, and another one called configuration policy. And that one is important because that links actually to one of your CIs or configuration baselines, right? So what I'm trying to say is that all this information here means something, and this information is going up as you've defined in your client settings to your management point and reporting policy compliance on configuration compliance on your clients. So this is where the data comes from, right? So that's via state messaging reporting cycles, which is 15 minutes on average by default. So to try and understand what all of this means, I can tell you that the topic type 302, that's that one here, with state message 2 means that evaluation succeeded, right? So this state ID 2 and topic type 302 for this particular one here, it means that evaluation of that CI or CB succeeded. If we look at 401, topic type 401 with state ID 1, that actually means that it's compliant for this big long GUID here. This one here is the one you're interested in, right? If you're wondering, well, where do I find that value? So if we look at 150F8, and let's go back to Config Manager here, and we go to, say, configuration baselines. If you right-click on the columns and choose CI unique ID, then you will have these new figures here, and it's not a configuration baseline. So let's look at configuration items. Do the same thing again. CI unique ID, and remember it was 15. We don't see it at all. Great. Okay, so it's neither of them, I guess. Fantastic. So why don't we search for this one and see, can that tell us something? Enforce MBAM encryption. We've enabled the CI unique ID, and let's look for 0A16A. 0A16A on the client. 0A16A. And we'll go up. There you see that value. So basically that's the CI unique ID for that, I think it was configuration item. And as you can see, it's got a state message with topic type 401, and 401 basically records the compliance or non-compliance of it. And based on all this data, the topic types, the state ID, and the GUIDs, you can actually translate this into meaningful information. I'm not going to explain it more than that, other than to say, if you head over to this website, and I'll post a link to it at the bottom of this video, Steve Rachui, I think that's how you pronounce his name, has written a very in-depth article many years ago about state messaging. And basically he explains how it works and how you can sort of dig around and find that information. So remember, I was talking about these values here and, you know, what they mean, right? So it's a lot of information, and you should take a look at it. All right. So is that everything that I wanted to cover? I think so. In this video, just as a reminder, we've looked at reporting on the Config Manager side. We've looked at the 5 built-in reports in Config Manager for BitLocker Management once you've enabled the MBAM feature. Here they are, the first 4 again, and of course you've got the auditing report that's there. You need to have reporting set up and working in order for any of this to work. You can also get some information on the clients themselves. I showed you how to do that, how to look at the compliance of the configuration baselines, to review the reports on the clients themselves. And I gave you some information about how you can utilize the compliance of your CIs or configuration baselines to create collections. Yes, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. You can use that compliance to create collections to your advantage. So in this case, because it's compliant, we can allow them to force encrypt. But that brings up an interesting thing. If we go to BitLocker Management and look at our Enable BitLocker Encryption policy, which we created earlier, you would think by going to the Deployments tab that when we right-click on the deployment itself, that we would have that option, but we don't. So we can't create collections from BitLocker Management policy at this point. Hopefully that feature will come later. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Here's the data, but we can't create collections from it, at least not natively in the console. So, all right, I think we've covered pretty much it for this video. Hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.